going to hang on for a few minutes. This is a session that I promised a while ago, and then I had to cancel it because I was poorly. And now I'm back to being fighting fit, and so I'm on doing it this evening. Now there is an event created on the page, but it wouldn't let me go live in the event. So I'm now on the main page. I'm just going to hang on for a minute or so and see if anybody's going to join me live. If anybody is there, do say hi and let me know that you're there. Even though this is going to be me talking at you for a little while. Hi, Jackie. On this topic, do feel free to ask questions as we go along. And likewise, if you are watching this, hi, Janet. Hello. If you are watching this on the recording, also still please feel free to comment, and we'll get back to you. Myself or Jackie will get back to you. Jackie is also online at the moment as well with me, so she will also be available to answer any questions. But I've probably, Jackie, if you can hear me, I've probably confused people because I said I would go live in the event and it wouldn't let me. So I'm now in here instead. Okie dokie. So I'm just going to give it another few seconds, another 30 seconds, and then I'm going to get started. Now, this was originally intended for teachers, but actually it'll be helpful for parents too. It makes no difference. Anger and aggression is anger and aggression, whether it's at home or at school. It makes no odds. So if we do have any parents joining us, then you're very welcome. Okay. So what I think I'll do is I'll just get started. And as I say, if anyone's got any questions that they want to post as I'm going through this, please feel free. If anybody doesn't want to post questions on here, in case, if they want to keep it confidential, then also please feel free to private messages through the page if this kind of brings anything up or you want to ask any other questions. But if you are there and you're okay to say hi, then do say hi and ask away. So I'm going to be shuffling around with papers because I've written some notes just to make sure I cover everything that I wanted to cover for you. And the reason that myself and Jackie wanted to do this on anger and aggression, and I've been wanting to do it for a while, is because it's one of the things that I would say, I don't know if Jackie agrees with me or not, give me a little like, give me some thumbs up as well if you can hear me, because it's quite isolated on here. You feel like you're kind of on your own, don't realise who's there. So give me some thumbs up or some love hearts or whatever so I can see that you're there. Oh, there's one. Cool. Okay. So the reason that we wanted to do this is because it's probably one of the most common things we get asked about from parents and also from teachers in schools. We do a fair bit of training in schools with teachers, and this is often something that will come up. And not only do we get asked about anger and aggression in children really often, I would also say that it's one of the most misunderstood and misinterpreted. There's lots of little things there now coming across. There's angry faces, there's surprise faces. And it's I do believe it's one of the most misunderstood feelings, I suppose, that we experience with children. And I'll go into kind of why that is. So, okay, I'm just going to read a little quote here about what anger is. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what anger is first and foremost, because any work that we do with parents or with teachers around anger, one of the things that we kind of want to do, which might sound a bit crazy, is we want you to fall in love with anger in the same way that we love feeling happy and joyous. We can often see the value in fear. We can often see the value in so many emotions, but we seem to have this thing whereby we are petrified of anger, or we worry, or we struggle to deal with anger. Now, I think that's often because what you're dealing with in the children that you're talking to or asking us about is rage, not anger. And there's a difference, and I'm going to come on to what the difference is, because they are very different. So if we're just talking about anger as a pure emotion, that is just as important as all the other emotions, and really, really, crucial that you empathise with your child when they are angry and you let them know that it is okay to be angry. It's not necessarily okay for them to be displaying rage, but again, it's different. I'll come to that in a minute. So anger is a pure emotion, a vital piece of intelligence about the immediate environment we are in, and it provides the energy and motivation for the sacred task of self-care. So it's part of what keeps us going and helps us with survival. And that quote's from Sue Parker Hall, who wrote an absolutely fantastic book, which I can share with you at the end. So anger is quite a pure emotion. However, if you're thinking about your children or children in school, and you can pinpoint one particular child, if they are not expressing anger constructively or respectfully, then it's probably not anger, it's probably rage. And you can see often rage. You can see the behaviours in children that appears much more like rage. When parents might describe they were just so out of control and you just can't talk to them in that moment, you just can't rationalise with them. No matter what it is that I do, they're just completely off on one. They're not just expressing anger. They sound like they are completely raging, and it is different. So because it's different, we're not going to deal with it in the same way that we would deal with the pure emotion of anger. When a child is showing anger and saying that they're really angry and they might even stamp their foot and show a little bit of kind of frustration, but they're not harming anybody, they're not taking it that step too far, they're not being disrespectful to people around them, projecting stuff onto people. That's showing anger. And if they show anger like that, then we praise it and we say, I can see that you're really angry, but it's fantastic that you're being respectful and, it's all constructive, and you can help them however you can help them. If they are throwing things, if they are swearing at you, if they are telling you that they hate you and they never want to see you again and that they don't want to be here anymore and they don't want to live anymore, or if they're in class and they're disrupting the whole lesson and the whole class, then you're talking more about rage. So I'm going to come on to the difference in a minute. Going back to the anger. Anger is our infrared sensor, okay? This is why it's important. It delivers essential information about our environment and what goes on around us. So it keeps us safe, it's survival, so it's really important. It keeps us safe and protected in our relationships with other people, and that goes through into adulthood. And it's crucial in the process of separation and individuation, which is a really important part of our emotional development. So if it's crucial in the process of separation and individuation, so when your children start to realise that they're okay on their own 2 feet, which is quite ironic because often some children, well, I say often some, quite often, children who display anger, or should I say more likely to display rage, can come across as completely independent and like they've got this whole separation and individuation from parents nailed because they can do everything themselves and they hate you and they don't need you, and they come across completely confident a lot of the time. But that doesn't mean that that's how they feel inside. And the chances are, if they are showing rage, that they actually feel extremely vulnerable on the inside. And it might be that, again, if they're showing quite a lot of rage, that might be an indication that something's going on with the separation and individuation stage with them. So maybe they are feeling like they need to separate out from the parents and take that next emotional developmental stage on, but for whatever reason they're reluctant. Maybe you've moved house, maybe you've had a separation, maybe they've had fallouts at school. There's something about them separating and individuating and becoming their own person that they're struggling with, and so they're potentially lashing out. For those of you that haven't kind of heard me talk about separation and individuation before, it's basically it's what we do. It's a really important part of creating our own unique identity. And that's why things like moving house, going up to a different year in school, parents separating, divorce, all of that stuff, no matter how amicable things like that are, it's change, and it's going to change their identity because their life as they knew it is no longer the same. So it is going to trigger some of that as well. And the anger enables them to keep their independence in adulthood and in further relationships, which is why it's really important that we get them to work out this whole anger stuff different to rage, because we want children to be able to express anger, and as adults we need to express anger. If you think about your own relationship with anger and how you express it as an adult, anger isn't something that I ever did very often and still don't. I'm more likely to withdraw and keep hold of it, but it'll build up and it's not taking care of myself because I'm not expressing it. Again, just a little bit about the developmental stuff here. We start to develop anger usually between the ages of 18 months and 3 years. And that's when we're looking at sort of separation and individuation. Now, that's not to say that anybody before then can't be angry, but we kind of work on things more specifically at different stages and different levels. And as I was saying earlier, we can often see anger in our children as quite an undesirable feeling. That we can often think, well, we don't want them to be displaying anger in front of other people, and what will they look like? And we don't. I've even heard parents saying, we don't do anger in this house. We don't get angry in this house. Well, how can you not get angry? How can anybody not get angry? It's an emotion that is there for a purpose, as is everything else. It's as important as joy and happiness. It's as important as fear, as sadness. You know, it's crucial. So it's about realizing that, to let them know it's okay to be angry, but actually if it's gonna be not constructive in the slightest and disrespectful and harmful to themselves or others, then it's not anger, it's rage. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about rage, and this is a lot of this is from Sue Parker Hall's book that I mentioned at the beginning. I'd say that was by far the best book I'd ever read on anger and aggression in children. So rage is, as it's not a pure emotion like anger, what rage is it's a mixture of a whole host of different feelings. And it can be really confusing, which is often why they can behave in a way that seems really bloody confusing. You know, you can be, 1 minute they're okay, and you can see them go from 0 to 60, you know, 0 to 160 seconds, and think, where on earth did that come from? And it's like they can just go at the drop of a hat because they're confused. So they're just reacting based on the feelings that they don't quite understand. And it's almost like they want them to go away and they're not sure what's going on. Oh, I know what to do. I'll throw this or I'll do that. So rage, rather than it just being about anger, now there may well be anger in there, frustration, but the chances are it's not only anger and frustration, it'll be sadness, it might be some fear in there, you know, there might be some excitement even in there. It's not necessarily that it's all going to be negative, but it's, you know, it's a complete mix of feelings. Now, as adults, we know that feelings can be overwhelming, can be confusing. We're not always sure what it is we're feeling. We might think that we're angry, but actually we might be sad. So, you know, it takes some working out. But the difficulty with anger, particularly in schools and with parents directly at home, what we find is if children display any kind of aggression, it's just instantly put down to anger. And actually you're barking up the wrong tree a lot, because if they're feeling a mixture of sadness and scared and frustration, and we're just focusing on this anger, then we're missing a trick with all the other stuff. And we're not helping them understand what it is they're feeling, because we're just putting it down to anger. So they'll just write themselves off as being angry. Oh, I'm just angry. I just get angry. When actually that's not anger. That's a whole host of really overwhelming feelings. That's a mix of lots of different things. It isn't just anger. So I'm just conscious there's a few of you here coming and going. It does not clear to me exactly who's there. But if anybody does have any questions as I'm going along with this, please do give me a shout and let me know that you're there. Jackie, are you still there? Just let me know if you're there and you can still hear me okay. Okay. So, okay, I'm just trying to think the best way to, okay, so hopefully you kind of started, yes, you're here. Oh, good. Okay, thanks, Jackie. I just don't want to talk to myself. So kind of hope you're getting the gist, partially of what one of the biggest things I'm trying to get across here is that anger is really important. We should be praising our children when they're expressing anger healthily, constructively, and respectfully to everyone around them. So even if your child shows rage a lot, but you notice on one occasion that they just seem angry and it seems like pure anger, and they get a little bit cross and a little bit frustrated, but then they manage to calm themselves, make sure you're showing them that you've witnessed them feeling angry and you've seen them display it in a really respectful and healthy way. And then when you see them expressing rage, that's where it's about kind of trying to, there's two different sides to it really. If your child is being harmful to themselves or others, there is, I mean, we do a whole module on managing behaviour, which I can put the link up to when I eventually post this video. But there is a huge part of that that is about managing the behaviour, managing what it is that you see that's in front of you. And a lot of the managing behaviour that we work with is very much around making sure that we praise them when they are doing things well. We praise them when they're doing what we want them to do. We're not going to give them loads of energy when they are kicking up a fuss and wanting all of our attention. But also we're really firm, and there are consequences in place, and there's certain behaviours that are just not acceptable. And a lot of when I speak to either schools or parents about children, when it sounds like they're expressing rage, I think a lot of parents, I'm speaking out of turn here, I hope, I'm not talking about anyone specific, but a lot of parents put up with a lot of shit off their children. And I think a lot of the time is because we, as parents, we worry, oh my goodness, they're angry all the time, they're a really angry child. Actually, they're showing rage, so they might be angry, they might be scared, they might be sad, they might be confused. So it's a lot bigger and a lot more kind of mixed than just anger. But it's like we then get scared of, oh, well, I can't be firm with them because actually, if I'm firm with them, I'm going to make them worse, and I need to be helping them because there's something wrong with them. And then what happens is we bottle it and bottle it and bottle it, and we're not particularly firm, and they can get away with murder, and then we flip because we've had enough. So then we shout at them, then we get angry, and then the cycle continues. So, you know, even children who are creating constantly are also doing things right, and it's about really focusing on those things. So I'm just going to go through a little list here of, you know, so unless anybody's got specific examples that they want to ask me about, oh, thanks, Jackie. She just posted the link there for the managing behaviour. I'd say that was one of our best modules, to be honest, because it just covers how to deal with these situations. You know, when your child is really angry or is displaying rage or is just getting to the point where they're just behaving in a certain way that you just can't deal with anymore, you feel like you can't cope with anymore. One of the things that I think we kind of do in that module is just give you a bit of a structure. And I say to parents, that sounds a bit odd, just trust me. Implement it, do it, stick to it, be consistent. It will work if you stick to it. If you do it half-heartedly, it won't. The other thing is, if there's more than one person parenting a child, then you both need to stick to it. You both need to be consistent. And that's really difficult when people are separate. And in that case, I'd say to you, don't beat yourself up about that. And if the other person is parenting in a way that you feel isn't helpful, then you can only focus on you. And actually, if they get one parent doing it, that's probably just going to be enough to get them and get the results that you want, even if the other parent isn't buying in. However, if you are fortunate enough to have you both being able to parent in the same way, great, do that. If not, don't beat yourself up about it. Okay, so this is just kind of a little bit of an overview of some of the things that we can do when our children are acting out. So the main thing is that we need to take charge. Now, that might sound really obvious, and you may be sat there as a teacher or as a parent thinking, well, I do take charge. I am in charge in my class, or I am in charge at home. But actually, in my experience, we think we're in charge, but we've got that much stuff going on in the back of our head about the assumptions we're making and what we're going to do and how it's going to escalate, that we're giving off a vibe to them that we are so not in charge. Okay, because we start treading on eggshells in order to kind of keep them at bay. Now, they're the ones in control of their behaviour. They can act out at any time. All we can do is deal with that consistently. So we need to take charge, and they need to know. And actually, on a compassionate level, part of what happens when children are experiencing rage is that they feel confused, they feel overwhelmed, they feel scared, they might feel angry, they feel sad, whatever it is that they're feeling, and this whole mix of feelings, they need to know that they're safe. And the best way for them to know that they're safe is for the parent to take control. even though they might kick up against that and call you all the names under the sun, tell you that they hate you and that you're a mean parent, etc., etc. You know, I've heard it all from parents that, you know, some of the things kids say is really awful and cruel to parents. But they need to know that they're safe, and the way they know that they're safe is when you're firm and consistent. And the difficult bit is the consistency is key, because if we're firm consistently, it means we can be calmer, because we've got, oh, frightened me, a noise in my ear, sorry. Oh, geez, that's loud. Yeah, it's because the consistency is key. And if we're not consistent, what can happen is we can get worked up. And that's when we can end up snapping when they're getting angry and we're like, oh my God, I'm here again. And then we get all wrapped up in it. So if we have a set plan and we stick to it, we don't need to get all wound up, because we can go, well, I'm just going to stick to the plan. This is how it is. So we need to take charge. You need to practice self-care on yourself. If you're dealing with a child who is expressing, whether it be in class or at home as a parent, expressing rage and behaviour that is draining because you feel like you're constantly having to manage that, then it's really important that you get taken care of as well. So that whether that be through being able to talk to friends, to family, or get support from a professional, who you can sit there and go, do you know, this week's been absolutely shit and I've been at the end of my tether and I feel like I'm going to lose the plot, etc., etc. Whatever that is, it's about you getting support, because if you feel more grounded and you're more supported, it will enable you to deal with them more easily. Okay. So yeah, just mention that about getting support from other people. Take a break. Sometimes you'll find that with your child, you've got into a bit of a battle. You're in a game with them, and it's escalated, and you're shouting at them, and they're shouting at you, and you're just in this completely pointless battle. Because actually, 9 times out of 10, the child is going to be able to go a lot longer than you are. We've got a little, someone's waving there, Sarah. Hi. You know, that they will probably be able to go a lot longer than you will. So you're not going to win that battle. So there's just no point in trying. And sometimes it is just about taking time out. And if you do end up shouting at your child because you're at the end of your tether, again, don't beat yourself up. It happens. But as soon as you realise what's going on and you hear yourself having almost like an argument with your child, or if you're constantly in this battle with a child in class who's saying, well, yeah, but this, or you said that, or you said that, it was trying, you know, take a big deep breath and just cut your energy off from them. Stop arguing with them. And then I hear parents say, well, they'll follow me, they'll do this, they'll do that. And this is where the consequences has to come in, and that you have to be supported by other people around you, and you have to be firm with what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable. And when you're in a blazing row with your child, is not a time to tell them what's acceptable, because they're not listening. If they're raging, they are not listening. They can't think clearly. So you can say, I've told you about this and you know what's going to happen if you do this. You may as well literally be stood there saying blah, 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 because that's what it sounds like to them. When they're calm and when you can talk to them calmly, that's the time to say, you know, when you have these outbursts, you know, when you get really angry, there's certain things that are acceptable and things that aren't. You can stamp your feet. If you need to, you can go and scream or shout into a pillow really, really loud, you know, so that it doesn't upset your siblings or doesn't upset other people in the class or whatever it is. You can go into a pillow or a cushion and scream. You can stamp your feet. As long as you're not harming anybody and you're being respectful to people around you, that is okay. The minute you cross that line and you can explain to them what that is not acceptable, and the consequence will be whatever that consequence is. And then the next time that they do it, you just put the consequence in place. If the consequence is that you will go into your room and I will shut that door and you stay in that room until you calm down, for example, that's not going to work for everybody, by the way, and you'll have your own, you'll know what will work with your own children. Then when they're having that outburst, you say to them, okay, as I've already told you, you go to your room. You don't need to go all over it again, because they're not going to listen. So it's just about having very clear, concise instructions, and that it's consistent every time. Again, as I said, because I think there's some newer people popped online, please do ask any questions at all that you might have. I will be posting the recording of this on the page as well, so you can watch from the beginning if you've missed the beginning bit. Excuse me. So yeah, so don't be afraid for you to take a break, okay? Because even if you give yourself 2 minutes in a room and you shut the door and you allow yourself 2 minutes without them and calm down, you will look at it from a completely different perspective. Because I also hear a lot with parents losing their rag with their children who are raging because they're at the end of the tether and they don't know how to, they're worried about what other people will see, what will the neighbours think if the children are screaming, what will, what will friends at school think, or what will the other children think if I am firm with that child every time they're like this. There's lots of things that we worry about, but then particularly as parents, what happens is the guilt kicks in then. Oh, maybe it's my fault. Maybe it's my fault because they've had to move school 3 times because we've moved house. Maybe it's my fault because we've separated. Maybe it's my fault. Life happens and things happen. It's not anybody's fault. It just happens, and things are not always ideal, but it happens. And part of learning to grow up is learning to deal with what life throws at us. So it's okay for them to feel angry that they've maybe had to move school. It's okay for them to feel angry that their routines changed. It's okay for them to be angry that their parents have split. It's okay for them to be confused about that, scared about that, sad about that, whatever it is. But it's not okay for them to be disrespectful and completely non-constructive with how they express it. So it's important that you don't get that part mixed up as well. Okay, so the other thing is to take your time. And again, it's just mainly about remembering who is the parent. Okay. And I know it's easier said than done, but if you think about, if you recorded the arguments you potentially have with your children at home, say, and I'm talking quite a bit about parents here, and I know that there are people in education that can be watching this, but I think it can be quite insightful because the children that are showing anger and aggression at school are very likely showing it even more so, if not 10 times stronger at home. And sometimes it is about helping and supporting the parents and kind of working together and in conjunction with each other so that, again, you're all on the same hymn sheet. So I was saying before about parents co-parenting, whether it be in the same house or from a distance, it's the same with teachers. If they can use a similar approach to the parents, it will be more of an advantage and it will work quicker with the child. So just has anybody got any questions who is on here at the moment? Anybody use any methods when their children are showing anger or rage that work or that don't work, or you want me to make you some suggestions? I'm more than happy to do that. As I say, if you don't want to pop it on here, you can private message. Just having a look at some of these notes here, if there's anything else. One of the other things that I think can happen when a child is showing rage and starts to get this kind of label that they're an angry child, and everyone around them is kind of, oh, what's wrong with them? Why are they like this? And it becomes kind of a bit of a self-fulfilling cycle, is, to pick your battles. If you're dealing with really quite high-level behaviour from them a lot of the time, and then they've done something like left something on their floor after you've asked them to pick it up, and it's really not a big deal, and they've been calm for the last hour, just leave it, and again, I'm not kind of saying be soft and let them get away with murder, but it is about working out, or realising that as frustrating as they can be, as disrespectful as they can be at times, as rude and aggressive to you and cruel to you that they can be at times, they are just trying to communicate something to you. And the more intense the behaviour, it's rage, it's not anger. So if it's rage, they might not even be that angry. They might be scared. They might be really sad. They might be really overwhelmed. And, if you think about, and again, often they can regress when they're like that. They're going almost quite a lot smaller when they're like that, even though they can appear as if they're older, because they can be quite cruel and adult-like in a lot of ways. The chances are they're regressing. And so it's kind of like thinking of it like a little tantrum. If a little 18-month-old is having a real tantrum, as frustrating as it can be, still, would you respond in the same way as you might do to your 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old who's expressing rage, when actually they need the exact same thing as the 18-month-old? They need empathy, and they need time and space to work out their feelings, and they also need you to be really firm with them, to be the parent and to not allow them to get away with murder. Often when they're pushing to see if they're safe. And if they get away with pushing too much, they don't feel safe. And it escalates because they'll push even further and further. They'll keep testing and testing you. And it's a way of them communicating. And don't be afraid to say to them, when you act like that, when you're throwing things or when you're hitting your sibling or whatever it is that they're doing, what is it that you're trying to tell me? If you could speak in that moment, if your fists or if your feet had a voice, what would they be saying? What is it that you're trying to get from them? What is the message they're trying to give you? Now, sometimes the behaviour after the initial behaviour can be a giveaway as to what's going on. So if they have a tantrum and they express lots of rage and, they're being really aggressive, what happens when they start to calm a little bit? What brings them back down? Do they then have a cry? Do they then want to cuddle? If the chances are, if they do cry, if they do want to have a cuddle, then if they're crying, maybe it wasn't anger, maybe they felt sad and they expressed it in that way through rage because it was mixed with other things. If they then want a cuddle, maybe they just needed something in that moment, they didn't know how to get it, and then eventually they get it. So sometimes the outbursts are a really unhealthy way of them getting to the end result, which can come after that once they've calmed down. So that might give you also a little bit of a clue as to what's going on specifically for your child or a particular child. So if it was in a classroom environment and you've got a child that's really distracted, etc., or is all kind of disruptive, what's the end result once they calm down? What is it that they've been given? What is it that has changed that for them? That might be extra support from a support teacher or something, whatever it is. And that will give you a clue as to what it is that they needed 10 minutes before when they started the outburst, but they felt that that's the way they had to try and get it. Excuse me. Kathy, my child has ADHD and struggles with aggression. Yeah, that's really, really common and really, really difficult for a parent to deal with. It's really, really hard. And, people say, oh, you shouldn't give children labels, or you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't do that. At the end of the day, it is what it is. What I always say with things like that is it's helpful to know if they've got something like ADHD, because there will be some familiar patterns that you can work with and things like that. But actually, all you can deal with is what you see day in, day out with that child. And the managing behaviour course that I mentioned before with myself and Jackie it's actually a method that has been used, or partly been used, for children with ADHD, because they're often kind of wrongfully labelled as quite naughty children. They can't focus, they can't sit still, they can't do this, they can't do that. And actually that's just not necessarily the case. They might at times struggle, but so might everybody else. And it's kind of, the biggest thing is about them. When I was saying, I don't know how long you've been listening for, Kathy, but if children have a condition, whatever the condition is, can be lots of different things. That might be then, so say somebody's got autism, for example, that then can be really confusing for them at times. So they're more likely to show aggression and rage because not only are they angry, but they're also maybe a bit scared and a bit confused. And it becomes this whole mix of things, and then they'll just express it in that way. So one of the biggest ways with things like that is if children are expressing aggression, potentially because of confusion or uncertainty, then again, the method that we use is really helpful, because it's a way of building self-esteem in them at the same time. Because I was saying earlier, when children are acting in an aggressive way, you'll probably know as a parent that children can act in an aggressive way and they can come across as almost cocky, like they know it all, almost like an adult, to the point where you can go, I really dislike this child at this moment in time, because it's almost like you're faced with a grown man or a grown woman who is treating you so disrespectfully and being so rude and kind of feel like a stranger almost. But you've got to remember that they're not, they're just children, and actually really, really vulnerable underneath. But the other thing I would say again, and I've already said this with aggression, it's really important that if they are potentially going to hurt people or themselves, that's the bit where you've got to be really firm with your boundaries, that it's just not acceptable. and that they're really clear on what is and what isn't acceptable in terms of the behaviour. That is so correct. Oh, good. Okay. So I'm not sure exactly which bit you're kind of referring to, Kathy, but hopefully that is, it's something we hear all the time, Kathy, particularly around things like ADHD, ADD, this thing of, well, this is, one of the things, there's a really good video on YouTube, and this is really relevant for schools as well, that children who often are told that they can't sit and focus in class, they can't sit and concentrate, they're disruptive, they behave in a way that is just disruptive to everybody else, so we take them out of class and we put them in isolation, or they have a lesson, but then they come out of the lesson, they take time out because they just can't sit and focus, blah, blah, blah. You put that same child, I mean, depending on their age, if you put that child in front of a PlayStation or an Xbox or whatever it is that the cool kids have these days, they would sit for 24 hours and probably not even go to the toilet or go and eat if you would let them. So how can that same child be written off as not being able to focus or concentrate when they clearly can? And if you look it up on YouTube, I think it's called Video Game Therapy, the video. And the guy explains this and what it is, what's different with the Xbox. What I was saying earlier about the way we need to be with them, the computer games, and the reason they can sit so long with them is because they're so clear, concise. The rules and the boundaries are completely clear and they're consistent. So if they're on a game and they know that if they don't do X, Y, and Z, or they fall down that hole, sorry, the only thing I know about computers, I just remember playing Lemmings where you fall off the cliff, and that's about as much as I know. You die on that game, you go back to the beginning, or you go back to whatever level you go back to. Now, they can scream and shout at that computer as many times as they want, saying, "That's not fair, I hate you," blah, blah. They can even throw the controller on the floor. The computer's not going to say, "Oh, okay, then you can stay on this level." It's going to take them back anyway, no matter what. No matter how loud they shout, it's going to go back to the beginning. So that's the bit. It's about them. They know exactly where they stand with a computer. It's very clear. It's consistent every single time. And if we can duplicate that same system in the way that we manage their behaviour, honestly, the results is phenomenal. So I would highly, highly recommend it to anybody as a method of managing your child's behaviour. The other thing about building self-esteem, for anybody that is on here that doesn't already have it, Jackie, if you're still around, or if not, I can do, if you could just put the link to the Main Parent Plus Academy, which is basically just an online portal that we've got, and there's some free stuff in there, something called the Leave approach, which is about building self-esteem in children. There are some paid courses in there. The most expensive one that's in there is $24.95, which is basically a load of videos and worksheets. And you can message and ask questions to myself and Jackie. One of the things we're really passionate about is if you're wanting to try and implement something at home, no offence, but you're going to get it wrong at first. You're going to try it and then you're going to give up because you're going to be tired. You're going to be sick of hearing it. You're going to think it doesn't work. So what we do with all our courses is we're there and we say, email us, ask us, tell us, I've tried it, doesn't work, it's rubbish. Okay, what have you done? And then what we will do is we will say, right, try this, try that, and we will almost hold your hand through implementing the things till you've got it, and then you'll just run with it. Thank you, I'll have a look at that. Never thought of that before. Yeah, I use it as an example all the time, Kathy, because I hear so much about children that can't concentrate, that can't focus. And I don't think I've ever met a child that's been described in that way at school or with a parent, particularly boys, that then doesn't sit for hours in front of a computer. So how does that work? How is that even possible? If they cannot sit and focus, how is that even possible? So that's the managing the behaviour, the link that Jack has put, that's the behaviour format that we would encourage you to put in with your children if they are displaying anger and aggression. But the main kind of thing for this is really, particularly again for schools and parents, is to want to kind of highlight to you that anger and rage are different. And if you're talking about children who are being really disruptive and disrespectful, then we're talking about rage. So anger management could be completely useless because you're just focusing on anger. What about the sadness? What about the fear? If you don't know what that mix of feelings is for them, it's like just working with one little part of it. And actually it could frustrate them even more, because if they think you're just focusing on their anger and yet they feel lots of other things, they just don't think you understand them or get them in the slightest. So it's just going to switch them off. So I'm conscious that I think I've talked for 40 minutes, 40 long minutes. So yeah, so if anybody has any questions, give us a shout. I will post this in the event that's on the page. I'll also just post it on the main Parent Plus page. I don't normally do videos as long as this, but I had promised to do this specific one. We tend to just try and do some short and sweet ones other than this. So look out for those as well. I'm going to hop off soon on, myself and Jackie both have coaching pages because we both work as coaches. We both train as psychotherapists, coaches, NLP, hypnotherapy. We both have our own coach. I'm just doing a little bit of a series on anxiety at the moment. Jackie is shortly going to be embarking on one on confidence, which will also be really helpful. So if anyone does suffer with anxiety or stress themselves, hop on over. I'm going to do a quick video over there shortly. It's Sari Taylor Coaching, and then there's Jackie Jones Coaching. But yeah, if any of you want to have a look at any of our other courses, our free ones or otherwise, then Jackie has posted both of the links. Oh, she's just put my website there too. We'll watch this back from the beginning, tuned in late tonight, and it's very relevant to our situation at the moment. Thanks. No problem at all. And if there's any questions you've got from the beginning, Sarah, just give us a shout. Just what I needed to hear tonight. Thank you. We'll be messaging you soon for more help with this. No problem, Katie. It's lovely to see you, by the way. I used to live with Katie when we were young and free, without children, Katie, and a lot less stressed, and drank a lot more. It was a lot more fun. So give us a shout if anybody has any questions at all, and we'll hopefully catch up with you all very, very soon. Bye for now.